Hey, District 2 sports fans, it's Gregory here, and I want to tell you about our new sponsorship here. If you're looking to make your business stand out, you've got to check out Chaos Cartel Company. They specialize in custom shirts, hats, tumblers, banners, and so much more. And the best part, there's no minimum order, and their pricing is amazing. I should know because we have a few shirts from them. Whether you're a small business or just looking to get some cool merch, Chaos Cartel Company is here to help. They love working with other businesses to bring your brand to life. If you want to get started, give them a call at 434 489 6123 or shoot them an email at chaoscartel1, and that's the number one, at gmail.com. Chaos Cartel Company, making your business look good, one custom piece at a time.
You are now listening to the District 2 Sports Podcast, available on all your favorite music apps. Like and subscribe.
All right, this is the District 2 Sports Podcast. We're back with another exciting interview here. We have the Hargrave Post Grad head basketball coach, Ben Veshi, in his second season. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, Coach,
Coach
go ahead.
Gregory, just forget it. I got to cut in right now because I did do a little research and I'm conflicted right now. So I've got to get to the brass tacks right now. I know Coach grew up and spent a lot of time in Massachusetts. I know he also did a little coaching over in Connecticut. So the $1 million question, Coach, I don't know if you know what's coming or not. Red Sox or Yankees?
So I'm laughing because I'm Red Sox all the way, right? But
Thank you, Jesus. Thank you.
my mother on the other hand, right? She grew up in New Rochelle, just outside the city, so she's a Yankees fan. My father, right, who's my best friend, right? He grew up in Worcester, Massachusetts, and he tells me that he liked the Yankees before he met my mom because of the professionalism, the no beards and the haircuts, and okay, Dad, I'll let you have that one. So they tried to brainwash me when I was a kid, and I remember vividly. I was 7, 8 years old, and Pedro Martinez was just mowing them down one game. My buddy was right there with me, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm a Sox fan all the way. But yeah, no, it's awesome. I'm trying to brainwash my daughter right now into being a Sox fan.
Well, people can say what they want to, but there is nothing like Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts. I mean, I love that place. I try to get there as much as I can, or when I can, when my schedule allows me. But I know it's a off the wall question, but I was like, yeah, I had to confirm it, and I wanted to see if you would say wicked hot or something, something like that. Just had to get there.
Oh, that's a good one. I think I've been in the South far enough or long enough that the Wickeds and all that. When I say it, people look at me like I have three heads. So I've tried to whittle it out of my vocabulary as much as I can.
Yeah, now you're into over yonder and down there.
Yep, and I say y'all. I say y'all more than I used to
Perfect.
say ever.
Is there
That's
have you moved on to sweet tea or are you still unsweet tea there?
So it's funny, right? Like my first experience with sweet tea was when McDonald's started. And then I came down here for college, and I went to Catawba College down in Salisbury, North Carolina, and they have a barbecue joint within walking distance of campus called Hendrick's Barbecue, and that's the first time I had real sweet tea, and I was hooked on it for a while. Now I'm trying to limit my sugar consumption, but
there you go.
every once in a while I'll have a nice sweet tea.
Well, look, this is all about you, but I just got to add in. I went to Boston in '83 the first time, and I think that was it might have been '84. That was yeah, '84. That was Roger Clemens's rookie year, and I luckily enough got to see him strike out 15 Kansas City Royals, which set a record. But anyway, I went to McDonald's, and me and my dad had breakfast, and I asked for sweet tea. They looked at me like I was an alien. No sweet tea in McDonald's. But then I go back in roughly 2000 and I don't know, 6 or 8 or whatever, and might have been a little bit longer than that. Then they're serving lobster rolls in the drive-through at McDonald's. So
Yep,
look how far McDonald's has come in Massachusetts. I just thought I'd throw that out
absolutely.
there. But it's all about you, Coach. I apologize for taking that much time.
Well, Coach, I want to dive into just this past weekend, and we you kind of we've been emailing back and forth, and we just talked about it a little bit before we got on air here. But a huge weekend there at Hargrave. You hosted the I think session number 3 of the EPL. You go 2-0, 2 big wins over London Basketball Academy and the Winston-Salem Christian. Kind of talk to us about the weekend in general, hosting that many games, and how your team played. And I think you have a little story about the backboard there breaking.
Yeah, no, it's so the overall weekend is called the Relentless Hoops Military Circuit. We've been doing it for 5 years with Relentless Hoops. The military circuit itself has been going on 7 years now. It was originally intended for Hargrave, Fork Union, and Massanutten to all basically play neutral court games at the other military schools, right? So what was originally supposed to be 3 games a day for 2 days, right? Turned into 17 games over 3 days this past weekend. The first game tipped off at 12:30 on Friday, and the last game tipped off at 5 p.m. on Sunday. And I was in the gym for every single one of them. So as a hoops junkie, right? It's an incredible weekend, right? You get some great teams. We had Nate Ament, who's a top 5 player in the country, just made the McDonald's All-American game. Him and his Highland squad were down here. And it was really cool to have a guy like that in the gym, right? Because Chatham being a one-stoplight town, it's a hidden gem. So to be able to have that as part of the event was awesome, right? And uh, as members of the Elite Prep League, the EPL, it became a league stop. So we were able to play a conference game against Winston-Salem Christian to move us to 2-2 in the league this year. But again, every day it's got its own adventures, right? And we made it through 16 and a half games, right? It was halftime of our game against Winston-Salem Christian. And one of our guys, Jed Barlow, who came over from New Zealand, he went up for a dunk during halftime warmups and shattered a backboard. I didn't know he had it in him, but he did it. So the normal 10-minute halftime turned into about an hour and a half long halftime. It's pretty cool, right? We were able to play the game at GW. We ended up winning by 18. But I had a lot of nervous energy on the drive down there because I'm like, man, am I crazy for trying to finish this game now? Should we just try to wait and play it on our home floor? Like I've never been to GW. Our guys have never been to GW. It's a new gym. High school 3-point lines versus a college 3-point line. All these things, I'm like, man, if we lose this game, I'm gonna look silly, right? And I get back in front of the players, and they couldn't see it on my face, but inside, I had that nervous energy going, and it was one of those moments where you don't know if you're getting through to your players, but I realized that on Sunday night. Earlier in the week, we started talking about how every game here on out, every day needed to be like Game 7, right? Game 7 mentality, win or go home. And the first Game 7 I talked about was the Chicago Cubs and the then Cleveland Indians in Game 7 of the World Series. And again, being a baseball guy, I talked to my team about the Cubs and 103 years of not winning a World Series, and all that pressure from the city of Chicago and the history there. And then you get to Game 7, and there's a massive rain delay, right? And it's like a 2-hour rain delay, and every baseball player has to go through it at some point. But to be able to stay loose in those moments, even in the most high pressure of games, and then the Cubs end up winning it, and it's awesome for the city of Chicago. We're getting ready to get warmed up over at GW for the second half, and one of my players turns to me, he says, "Coach, it's just like the Cubs game." So that's pretty cool. And you know, it's nice to know that at least one guy was listening. But yeah, I don't know if I've ever experienced an hour and a half halftime before, but it's funny and you know, again, on that point of like game seven, right? It's really cool. I'm all major sports. I love them, right? I coach basketball, but I was a better baseball player than anything. But you know, this is great because I get to use all this useless knowledge in my head of great game sevens. Like I talked before the London game, I talked about the Stanley Cup last year and how the Florida Panthers were up 3-0 and they blew that lead and were able to be resilient enough to win it. And you know, it was more so about, hey, teams are going to make runs in games, and you know, you have to stay together and weather the storm. And then I do have a couple guys on our team that are Yankees fans, so I made sure that on Sunday night my pregame speech was back from October 2004, and it was Kevin Millar saying, "Don't let us win tonight." Don't let us win tonight. And, you know, then Dave Roberts gets the steal and David Ortiz became a legend. And it was, so, you know, it's really cool. And it's a theme that I think we'll keep throughout the rest of the year. You know, try to give these guys different perspectives so that, you know, again, we can keep it loose, but also understand that at this level of prep basketball, right, you know, winning really matters.
And Coach, I want to talk about Walter Davis Gymnasium. So, I mean, to be able to have that many games, I think you said 17 over the weekend, and have, you know, different players, different teams, fans go to come in there, kind of just be there in that historic gym. You know, what does that mean to Hargrave, and you know, what does it also mean to be able to play in front of you know, I think I guess you call them cadets, I guess you would say, or the students there, the student body there, and um, just a personal story for me. I've been there a lot, you know, through my younger years watching them play. I remember watching Hargrave play Notre Dame Prep. I think it was like number one versus number two, and been all the Piedmont Invitational. So it's a really good experience just to be there and just kind of see the student body into it and just kind of be in that gym in general.
It's it's truly a facility that's second to none. I know I'm biased because I'm here, but you know, I have to make sure that whenever I do something on Twitter, right, that I leave enough characters to put historic Walter Davis Gymnasium. Every single time I reference it, it's historic Walter Davis Gymnasium because you walk into the lobby and you just have the feel, right? Like you see all the alums that are currently playing in college on the original backboards from Walter Davis Gymnasium, right? Like, so there's history there. You walk in and you've got the wooden ceiling, and it's incredible, right? You know, so to be able to have an event like this, and we had 15 different schools from all over the US and Canada come in, and it was really cool. And you know, for those kind of prep schools to come into Hargrave for the first time, right? They're like, oh, I'm going to a military school. Like, there's going to be barbed wire. There's going to be guard dogs. I got to check in somewhere. And it's like, no, 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 no. Look, this is incredible, right? You know, you walk into a facility like this, you go upstairs to the museum, and you see the national championship trophies, the 29 NBA players. You know, it's really it is historic, right? And every single day we're in here, you know, we're chasing that history, right? We are. You can count Sunday night because half the game was played here, but we're on a 127 game home winning streak. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it's we haven't lost since February of 2019. We lost on a buzzer beater in the first Piedmont Championship to Mount Zion. Allende Hakeem, who's now at UMass Lowell. I still remember it to this day. It was a floater. He hit it and he sprinted down to the visitors' locker room. You know, he's like, I'm not waiting for a review. I'm out of there. But yeah, 127 straight, and part of that home court advantage, right, is the cadets, like you mentioned. You know, Friday afternoon we played at 2:30, which is kind of a weird time, right? It's tough to get fans there, but our commandant made it mandatory for the boys to come down. And it was the best thing for the event, right? Because you've got the band over there banging the drums, and because it's an older gym, you know, the sound just goes everywhere and the echoes everywhere, and it feels like you're coaching a game inside Cameron or the Dean Dome or something like that. You know, we did it earlier in the year with the Shooting for Success Classic, right, where we had elementary students from three different elementary schools come in, and they're fourth graders. They don't know what they're screaming at. They want to see dunks. They want to see 3-pointers. But when you put 400 of them in there, 500 of them in there, it feels like it's 15,000. And it's a really special place, and I'm blessed to be able to coach in here every day.
Coach,
Coach.
carrying
Okay.
on with the Walter Davis Gymnasium, back, I don't know, I'll go back 20 years if that. It used to be that to catch the post grad team, you could catch them in the gym on or during the Davenport Energy, or what, I forget what it's called, that tournament at the end of the year. You'd have Friday and Saturday, that'd be the only time. So did the EPL, I guess that's the EPL league, did that actually change where you got more home games and didn't have to necessarily play on the road all the time?
Some of it, right? It's the longer I'm here, the more I learn about the history of our program. Being around, being back since 1990, 91, right? Which, not to age myself, but I was born in 91, so the program's been around as long as I've been alive, right? And every coach had their own cadence, right? Coach Keats, when he came back after going to Marshall. For those 2 years, he came back and he wanted to be on the road, right? They were only playing like 27 to 30 games, and maybe 4 of them would have been at home. And then uh, Coach A.W. Hamilton he played for Coach Keats, and then he started working for Coach Keats, was an assistant for 6 years. He takes over as the head coach, and, Coach Hamilton is, I mean, he's salt of the earth, right? If you've ever talked to him, it's like you've known him your whole life. He was able to fundraise a great sum of money to redo Walter Davis Gymnasium. So with that, right, we started playing some more games, right? The 30 games turned into 36, and then eventually, the year that we won the national championship in 2016, we were 47-1, and half of those games have been at home, right? So last year we had 21 home games. This year we'll have 21 home games. Um, so it has allowed us to play some more home games because the Elite Prep League, right? There's so much travel involved that it's like, basically every Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday, you're on the road. So you want to try to get a midweek home game just to stay sharp. Early in the season, you try to get your rhythm, so we're able to play. I think that in any given year, we probably play more home games in late October, early November than previous years had played in 3-4 years. That's how many home games we're trying to get in, and it's nice because again, you do have NBA players that come through here, right? So you don't have to wait until the first Piedmont to catch them at the end of the season, right? You can catch them on a random Wednesday in November.
Coach, I noticed a couple things about you. I needed to compliment you on your barber, by the way. So wanted to let you know that. I didn't know if it was a prerequisite that, following Coach Hamilton out there or what, but the other thing I was going to get to was does Coach Hamilton or does Coach Keats, do they poke their head in every once in a while and check on things, or how's that relationship with you guys?
They do. It's truly incredible to be part of this coaching tree, right? I mean, Coach Keats, they gave Duke a run for their money last night, inside Cameron, and coach has been a really great mentor to me. He'll come by probably once a year. Coach Hamilton, he's the one that hired me back in 2016, 2017, and he's actually now on our board of trustees, right? Coach Hamilton, he went here as a post grad. He worked here for 12 years. Like he is Hargrave. So those guys, they're great. It's really fortunate to be able to just pick up because they've experienced Hargrave, right? So, to be able to lean on them to get some advice, and guys like Lee Martin, right? Uh, Lee was here for 7 years in total. And he actually played here. So he was here for 8 between a player and a coach. And he's actually the one that performed the ceremony at our wedding, right?
Wow.
The college roommate, and So to have those kind of guys in your corner is really awesome, and to see the heights that Coach Keats and Coach Hamilton have gone to. Coach Martin Lee he's on his way to being the next head coach at the Division I level from the Hargrave coaching tree. Um, Mark Byington is doing a pretty great job at Vanderbilt in year one. Coach Byington, he was here for a year as an assistant back in the early 2000s.
I never
So
knew that. Yeah.
yeah, it's I think right now we've got between guys that have either played and slash or coached here, we've got over 30 coaches at the Division I level right now.
Wow,
Um,
I did not know that. And I know I'm dominating these questions, Gregory, so I'll let you take over in just a second. But, you know, Coach, I don't know how, do you have enough wall space behind you there to get all of these certificates and degrees that you have? I mean, my goodness, I see you're a master of this, a master of that. I mean, you've spent some time in education, and at the same time, it's like you've spent time mopping the floors, coaching JV basketball, girls basketball. I mean, just kind of, lead us through what you've actually done in your past before you even arrived at the post grad level.
it's it's funny you mentioned that, right? Because I'm actually thinking about going back to school again, just to just I like to stay sharp, right? I'm as avid of a reader as I can be as an in-season coach. Um, but basketball has always been a part of my life, right? My grandfather, he he actually uh, he put a pad down in the backyard, right? He put up a hoop for me. I was 6 years old and there playing with it. He was teaching me how to play. He actually he was in the military. I have the articles of him playing games on base in Korea, so that was really cool. And that's really where my love of basketball first started. And I was incredibly fortunate. Went to a small Catholic school, St. Anne's. And the first time I was ever able to try out for the team, I was a fourth grader. I was standing about 4'6". I had to stand at the top of the key to shoot free throws because I jumped forward that much. But I was able to play on an incredible team. We went 29-0 that year. We won the CYO for all of New England. So ever since then, like I've been hungry and chasing this basketball thing and went on to play at Marianapolis Prep in Connecticut for 4 years. We went to four straight New England championships. We won my freshman year and then unfortunately lost the next three, but we were right there every single year. And we did it with a group of guys that were mostly Division III kids, right? That they were great high school players and we played hard and we played the right way. Dave Vitale was an incredible coach. And it might sound like revisionist history, but uh, I knew when I was 14 that coaching is what I was going to end up doing, right? My buddy from St. Anne's and I was still one of my best friends today. We would play in the backyard and play in the driveway, and it's like, all right, you're going to go to Duke, I'm going to go to Carolina. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great when you're 13. Then you turn 14, you can't jump over a piece of paper. You got to shift your dreams a little bit, right? You and I knew I wanted to be around basketball. Right? I had some opportunities to play at the Division III level back home in Massachusetts, but I wanted to go to the highest level I could because I wanted to be around the best coaches. Right. Again, I wasn't good enough to walk on at a Division I level, but I was able to walk on at Division II Catawba College in Salisbury. I got to play for Jim Baker, who's the legendary coach there. He was at Catawba for 22 years as the head coach. He played there, second all time in wins to Sam Moyer, who the court's named after down there at Catawba. And then, it's funny, Coach Baker ended up coaching at Central Cabarrus High School down in Concord. And I think they lost 3 games in 3 years. Like it was just an incredible run. He's now at the Cannon School doing a great job. But Coach Baker was he was willing to take me on as a walk on, right? And I played 17 minutes in my entire college career, right? 17 minutes in 4 years, but I knew every scouting report front and back, right? My teammates were coming to me at the end of the bench like, "Hey, what's this guy do?" Right? And I was able to, in practice, I could run the plays from the 5 or the 1 or the 3, right? And all that just fed my basketball knowledge. And get to senior year, don't really know what I want to do, right? I applied to a couple grad schools. I got into Florida State, you know, maybe thought about going to Florida State, trying to be a GA down there. I was it's fortunate now, but I started dating my wife in March. She was a freshman, I was a senior, so I really bold move on my part. But I ended up going back home to Massachusetts for a year. I was able to go back to my alma mater, Marionappolis. Got to coach. I was hired to be the boys varsity assistant. And then started talking with the girls coaches, and they were like, hey, do you want to come help us out too? And meanwhile, I'm 22 years old, I'm willing to do anything, right? I was reffing soccer matches so I could make a little bit of money. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And I ended up just becoming a practice player on the girls side, and because I'm 5'9", I had to play the post. And I was telling those girls every day, I was like, I don't know how you do this. You got to run rim to rim. You got to rebound. You got to screen. You might not even touch the ball for 10 minutes. I'm like, I'm going to go back to being a guard where I can go 3-point line to 3-point line, and I'm going to get a touch. But it was a really enjoyable experience, right? To be able to see both sides of things. I got some great advice from other coaches that I played against in the past, about how do you find your coaching voice. But again, out of love, I moved back down to North Carolina without a job. Right, I was like, hey, I'm going to figure it out. And unfortunately, that March, Coach Baker had gotten let go at Catawba. He had a few bad years to end it. And one of the coaches that was on staff my senior year, he stayed on as an assistant. And a guy by the name of Rob Perrin got the job. He was at Newberry as the associate head coach. Used to be at UNC Charlotte. He's a big Minnesota Twins fan, so we won't hold that against him. But Coach Perrin, like it's funny, man. You start talking about all these things, and you remember how you broke in, and I remember it was June 2014, and Coach Perrin, he gave me this assignment. He's like, all right, I want you to create a brochure for camps for the summer and like do a summer league. And I'm over there like I don't have access to Adobe or anything like that. I'm doing this on clip art. Like I'm doing it on Microsoft Paint, trying to figure. I'm stressed, right? And he tells me afterwards, like I was going to hire you anyways, regardless of how good that was. And I was like, well, man, you should have told me that beforehand. But he gives me a job on his staff, and I volunteered for 2 years at Catawba.
Wow.
I did a little bit of work in the athletic department to try to make some money. I trained kids so I could at least get enough money for gas to get there and back. Right. I lived probably 45 minutes away. So those 5 a.m. workouts, right? The guys were like, oh man, I got to get out of my dorm room and get down to the gym for 5 a.m. Like, buddy, I'm up at 3:30. Like, but it was really awesome. Right. And then I get a call from Lee Martin, who again was my roommate at Catawba. He played at Hargrave. We graduated college on a Saturday. He started working at Hargrave on a Monday.
Wow.
Right. So he called me and said, hey, there's going to be an opening with our varsity head coach. Would you be interested in the job? And I was like, Lee, I don't know if I'm ready to be a head coach yet. I kind of like being an assistant. I'm trying to figure things out at the college level. And he's like, well, you can get your meals and housing covered and we'll pay you $10,000. And I said, buddy, I'm in. I felt like I felt like I was a millionaire.
Rich.
Yeah, and like it's funny. I go back up on barracks now and I look and I'm like, hey, this is exactly where I stayed. But it was a great opportunity. I got to meet with Coach Hamilton, and he kind of walked me through things. And the year I came in was right after a national championship. The post grad team went to the Final Four that next year. I had Najee Marshall, who's currently playing for the Mavericks on that team, Braxton Beverly, who had a 4-year career at State, Justin Brown, who was at USF and UAB. Like, it was an incredible team, like a truly incredible team. And I was like, I was amazed every single day. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, this is an incredible program to be a part of. And then just every year since, right now, it's year 9 in total at Hargrave, and I think I've held every job you could possibly hold here, except for custodian. But I do mop the floor and sweep things up. So I guess I'm close enough. But no, I mean it's been an incredible place, and the journey to get here and to be sitting in this office that I remember, I'd come up here and meet with Coach Hamilton 9 years ago, and he would kind of diagram stuff for me, and I would ask him questions about how we did things, how he got to where he was, and now my assistants are coming up here and asking me those questions, and it's pretty cool to have that full circle moment. Having guys that played here come back and work. It's again, it's a special place.
Coach, I usually have my questions written out and, kind of have a little form that I go by. And then when I get into the conversation, I hear things. And so the tendency is to leave that, set thing and go with it. I heard one thing in particular that you just mentioned, and it was early in our conversation just a few moments ago. The 1, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5 guy. I remember playing JV basketball. I never played varsity, but I played JV basketball over at GW. And we had to learn how to what I considered a legendary coach in Butch McDaniel. And anyway, I had to learn all 5 positions. So, even at 5'10", 5'11", you still had to learn the 4s and the 5s. So I'm sitting here looking at one of the questions I had on my paper, and I'm kind of trying to draw some conclusions to this, but I go back to a game in 2019 where a specific record was set, and there's no way you had a 4 and a 5 guy in that game. There's no way.
We did
If you recall what I'm talking about.
most points. What was
At
it?
most points, 173 points in the game, a record.
So you ready for that? Right.
Yes, please.
Uh, that was that was game 1 of the current winning streak we're on. We I don't feel bad. We needed a win, and we just every ounce of anger and frustration we had from the game before just kind of came out, and like you have to make a lot of shots. But no, I mean on that team, our 5-man that year was only about 6'9". Tyson Jackson ended up going to Middle Tennessee State, finished his career at New Orleans. But that was a really cool group because like Giovanni Santiago was the starting point guard. He was at Kent State for 4 years. He was on the Puerto Rican junior national team, and he was just a lefty that was smooth. Then you have Jeremiah Davenport, Cincinnati. You have Mickey Pearson, TCU. You have Devontae Ticket Gaines at Tennessee, right? So like it didn't matter who was playing against us that day. We were going to score 173. Like we had enough firepower on that roster that it was going to happen. And it helps that we pressed 40 minutes a game back then. So you force a lot of turnovers, you get a lot of dunks and layups. And then at that point, it doesn't matter what position you are, right? Because you're not running a lot of offense when it's fast breaks.
Coach, I want to kind of take it to kind of prep side of everything. We talked to Yerrick Stoneman at Oak Hill, and he kind of mentioned, I think it's called the EPYL, whatever it is. But he kind of mentioned, Oak Hill's been in for a long time, just like Hargrave has been in for a long time. I guess you're considered blue bloods. You have these new schools popping up all the time. I consider you and Brewster and the Tilton School all kind of blue bloods, but you've had like, Putnam. I think they're fairly new, popping up. You have all these other schools popping up. How difficult has that been to kind of recruit against that and kind of compete against that with these schools just kind of popping up, coming out your throats every week?
Yeah. So again, a couple things, right? Like having Oak Hill and Hargrave in the same state, it's really incredible, right? Like Hargrave, 29 NBA players, Oak Hill, 33, right? That's the most of any 2 schools. Like we have the most on the prep side, they have the most on the high school side, and Steve Smith built an incredible program there, and Yerrick's doing an incredible job. Like I look forward every year to playing that exhibition with them. Even though we've been on the wrong side of it the last 2 years, it's great to be able to play a game like that. With 2 storied programs. And then Brewster, right? Like Brewster is now in that same Nike league with Oak Hill. They had an opportunity to go more national high school than prep. But what Jason Smith did uh, what Jason Smith did with that Brewster program is incredible. I played against them my senior year up in, we lost by 25 at their place, but they're throwing alley oops from half court. Nadir Tharp and Thomas Robinson both going to Kansas, but Melvin Edgem, who was the Big 12 Player of the Year at Iowa State, came off the bench on that team my senior year. But Jason's been a basketball lifer at the prep side, right? He was an assistant at Notre Dame Prep back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and he's been around that long in the prep space. It's funny you mentioned Putnam, right? Because Putnam Science is 15 minutes away from Webster, Massachusetts, right? So I grew up playing against those guys, right? And when I was in high school, they had a bunch of exchange students from Turkey, and they played hard, but they weren't very good, right? And the guy that was there right at the time, Tom Espinoza, my guy Espo, he didn't want me. He didn't want me on the JV team. He was the JV coach at Marianapolis too. He didn't want me on the JV team because I was gonna have to split time with varsity. But he didn't want me, and I remind him of that every single time I see him. But Espo and Josh Scraba, those guys, they've been there now for almost 20 years, and they've developed it into a legitimate program, right? Uh, it's a good reference, right? Like, is UConn a blue blood? People would say yes now, right? Because of the success they've had since 1999, but they're probably more of a new blood, right? And that's what Putnam is. And it's just ironic that they're both in Connecticut, but Putnam is up there, right? Like in the prep post grad space, you're looking at Hargrave, you're looking at Fork Union, Brewster, St. Thomas More, right? Like those are really the four that I would probably call the blue bloods, right? Like what Fletcher Ariett did at Fork Union is second to none, right? Jerry Quinn has been at St. Thomas More for a long time, and Brewster obviously had the success that they had. But you're right that I'm going to use this word, and I don't mean it to be entirely negative, but there is an epidemic in prep basketball right now. The three of us, if we find enough capital and 5 kids, we can start a school, right? We could call it District 2 Academy. And
I'm down actually.
and we'll play whoever, right? And it is unfortunate, right, that's kind of where we are now, and especially in this region, right, Virginia, North Carolina, it's notorious for having these pop-up schools, right? And I talked with my predecessors, and prep basketball also has never been as good as it is right now, right? Like there was a lot of talent back in the early days, but it was all to like 5 or 6 or 7 schools. Right now, we're looking at a national prep championship that's a 16-team field, and there are probably 20 teams currently on the bubble right now. Back in the day, it was a 4-team tournament, and you knew what 4 were in by December because it was just clear who the 4 best teams in the country were. Schools like Putnam that have been able to do it the right way, right? They have helped be that rising tide, right? That it's lifting all boats. It's making us have to work even harder, right? I tell people and I tell my staff all the time, right? Like, guys, if we can recruit kids to Hargrave, you can get kids anywhere, right? Because again, people don't know what they don't know. Military school is still going to have that negative connotation, right? So when you have a pop-up prep academy, they're like, oh, hey, you can just come here. You don't have to cut your hair or shave your face. I always remind people that they don't have to look like me because they can't pull it off, right? You do, but um, but I like it. It has made things more difficult for us, right? So, we have to do our due diligence so that we don't miss on anybody, right? And we need to find the right kind of guys for us. But I think that those pop-up prep schools, they're here to stay for a while. Some of them do it the right way. And those are the ones that I'm more likely to put on the schedule. There are some guys that we've had on the schedule for 3 years, and each of the last 3 years they come up with an excuse 24 hours before the game why they can't come. I've scheduled games in the last 2 years. I'll schedule a game with a school in July. Come November, they don't exist anymore. And
Wow.
it's like, you know, again, I understand that people are trying to break into that market space, but at the same time, like, it does give prep basketball a bit of a bad rap, and that's why it's still there's a heavy bias on the New England prep schools because they're all established brick and mortar schools. They're not doing online classes. Their kids are wearing shirt and tie every day. Very similar to what we do, and that's why we have to find a way to stay relevant in that market. And playing some of these pop-up preps, it doesn't actually help us.
Coach Gregory, I don't know if I can at the District 2 Academy. The only thing I can offer is coffee and donuts. I'm not sure how many I'm gonna get here. But hey, Gregory, I don't want to steal any thunder from you, but I had to mention something. Coach, I know you got a strong support system from past players, just the network, businesses, and a particular family stands out to me, and I just wanted to kind of dig in a little bit. I've got a son that works for First Piedmont, and I just know that Mr. Davenport, Ben Davenport, and his wife, and to my knowledge, and I might be totally wrong, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they ever had children of their own. And I just was curious, do you feel like you've been adopted into the Davenport family? Because I mean, they're avid supporters. And, when the doors are open at Hargrave, you're going to see Mr. and Miss Davenport.
The I I think that, you know what, I've never actually said it out loud, but I do feel like I've been adopted, right? It's it, what Mr. and Mrs. Davenport have done for not just our program, but for Hargrave. Like, it's truly incredible, right? And I love every opportunity I get to sit down with Mr. Davenport, and we'll talk Virginia Tech hoops. Even though Mike Young is a Fork Union guy, we let that kind of slide, and it's okay. But Mr. Davenport has just been he's been incredible for the academy at large, and to be able to see him. In the gym, especially during that first Piedmont tournament, right? Which wouldn't be possible without him. It's great to have him here, and to see the smile he has on his face when we play Fork Union in the championship, and we're able to beat him. To see the way that he lights up, it's incredible. He's the most humble person I've ever talked to. He couldn't be more modest. I'm kind of waiting for the day that I can go ahead and rename the court here, Walter Davis Gymnasium, the Ben and Betty Davenport Court, just because that's how much they mean to our program and our school. But I could talk for hours and hours just about how fortunate I am to know them, right, and how fortunate we are to have their support as an academy.
Coach, I want to talk about, you kind of mentioned Virginia Tech, and I was looking at something that Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, Hampton-Sydney, UNC Pembroke, you had several different coaches there over the weekend. I just want to talk about, kind of like the prep mixed in with the whole NIL and the transfer portal. How has recruiting D1 changed over the years as far as, Hargrave and just prep in general?
It couldn't have changed more, I don't think. It's funny. I talked about it last year with some of my predecessors and my staff about the team that we had last year, and we had 7 Division I guys last year. If we had that same roster 5 years prior, we have 12 Division I players, right? Like, it's just like, even right now, I believe that of our 14 guys, right? We've had 2 already signed Division I, but you can't tell me we don't have 10 Division I players, right? But then you look up and it's like the guys that are on the fringes, they're not being recruited at the Division 1 level as much, right? Because unfortunately for some guys, right, like uh, I'll use me for an example, right? I'm 5'9", 5'10". I used to be able to shoot the cover off the ball. Uh, you can look at that as a 19-year-old coming out of Hargrave, but you can also find a 23-year-old that can do the same exact thing, right? The difference is that where that NIL comes into play is that the way that the market's moving, it actually benefits high school guys a little bit more, to be honest with you. Uh, because, and again, you can talk about this openly now, right? Like Rick Barnes the other day talking about sitting Chaz Lanier for not shooting the ball, and it's like, buddy, that's what you get paid to do. And it was really refreshing to hear Coach Barnes say that. But the thing about prep school kids and high school kids is that they're way cheaper than transfers, right? You look at especially the 5 man, right? The fives, the fours, the big man market right now. Uh, you want to get a kid out of the portal, it's going to cost you close to 6 figures. You want to get a high school big man that you might have to develop a little bit, you can get him for pennies on the dollar comparatively, right? And that high school kid, you give him $10,000, he feel again, like I said, you feel like a millionaire, right? Because it's the most money you've ever held at any one time. So it has shifted things, right? It's also changed the timeline a lot more, right? Of the 7 guys I mentioned on last year's team, only 3 of them were signed with Division 1 schools before April 16th, right? 4 of those guys came incredibly late, including 2 of them into June, right? So it's the dynamic has made things it's almost like you have to be willing to accept whatever risk you're comfortable with, right? You can sit here and you can be a fringe Division 1, Division 2 guy, and you can have these 3 Division 2 schools want to offer you a full scholarship over here, but you believe you're a Division 1 guy. So it's like, do you take that Division 2 offer and then go prove it and transfer? Or are you willing to wait, right? Are you willing to wait for that Division 1 that might not come, or it might come so late that everything feels rushed. And again, it's risk reward, right? Like, do you want to feel settled and know where you're going next year, or do you want to wait? And then you wait and you start to get impatient, and then you start to get nervous, and you're like, did I make the right decision? And it's the same. I use Division 1 and Division 2, but it's the same if you're looking at like Power 5 versus low major, right? At the end of the day, like, we encourage our guys to find the best fit for them. It's funny, like, guys that are just accepting of that, right? That they're not as much focused on the destination as they are like, this is part of the journey. Those are the guys that commit to the school, it's the best fit for them, and then they find success, right? And once they find that success, then they can go. Mark Sears is a great example, right? Because Mark was right on that fringe of, COVID hit during the year that he was here. So everything was kind of funky in general. But, Mark was criminally under recruited, right? And he ends up going to Ohio, right? He followed Lee Martin there. And he had 2 really good years, right? Because he went to a level that he could play. And then he got to go to his dream school, leads Alabama to their first ever Final Four, and Mark's kind of had an up and down 5th year. But he's also cashed in a little bit NIL wise, and he's using it, right. He's using his NIL money to give back to his communities, right? Like, I'm in touch with his dad every once in a while, and to see the work that Mark is doing in the community, right? He's doing it the right way. But that's a kid who was willing to wait, right? He was willing to wait for the best fit for him, and everything worked out. So recruiting is definitely more of an art than a science, more than it's ever been.
And coach, I come off the rails when it comes to NIL. These boys of mine know that, and I know it's a delicate situation. And I'm just old school. I'm from the times where the school had something to offer you, not where you come to them and say, "This is what I can do for you now." And you know, I hate to add names to this, but I was kind of overwhelmed by uh, I think it's AJ DeBonsa, commanding $7 to $9 million and going to BYU. Okay, I'm not taking anything or saying anything negative about BYU, but to me, it don't sound like you're trying to win a national championship, if you ask me. But that's just my personal opinion. And then the other day, I'm reading something. I'm a Tar Heel time guy, so I listen to a lot of things. And there's a certain Finnish player now that actually admitted, and this is where it kind of takes me back a little bit, actually admitted that he didn't know exactly, which I kind of find a little facetious, who was recruiting him because all of his schools are talking to his agent. So that kind of just takes me back that where's the interest now? Is it just money or what?
Uh, you know, I think you raise a valid point, and obviously there's two sides to every coin, right? You look at like I mean AJ DeBonsa, for example, right? Uh, you know, AJ, Massachusetts guy, right? Like he's bounced around a little bit in high school. But for him, right, the goal was always to go to the NBA, right? So the fact that he can capitalize on some NIL stuff now before he gets to a first contract, and again, he's prolific. So I would think a second contract is in his future, but that second contract may never come. But you choose BYU because Kevin Young just came from the Suns, right? Everything they do is NBA, right? So he is lining himself up for that. Yeah, are they going to compete for a national championship? Probably not, right? But people also were questioning Duke with all the freshmen they had, right? And uh, I've watched a lot of Duke just because they're on national television, and to see the growth in Cooper Flag and Con Knipple, right? They have a legitimate chance to compete for a national championship. It's again, it's all part of that art of recruiting, right? You just kind of have to be you have to be aware of what every individual's motivation is, right? And it's funny, I joke with college coaches now, but they now know what we feel like, right? Where we have to replace 15 guys every single year. And like, obviously they have more of a piggy bank to be able to make that happen, but you have to find the right guys that fit you. So knowing what those guys are after and them being sincere in what they're going after. Again, I've heard of some of that where guys like the coaches are going right through the agents. And I think that unfortunately that's probably a recipe for disaster. That's just subjective, right? There's no data to
Right.
prove that, but at the end of the day, I tell the parents here a lot, right? Like uh, thank you for trusting us with your young man, right? I am going to coach your young man. I will communicate with you because I know that he's away from home, but my job is to make sure that he is the most prepared, right? And if I don't ever talk to the kid in the recruiting process, right, I just talk to mom and dad, or I talk to the uncle or anything like that, I don't have a great relationship with the kid, and everything just it takes more time, right? Things are clunky, and obviously, without friction, there's no movement. So there needs to be some of that. But again, it's with NIL, with player empowerment, right? Like I am supportive of that because again, for years, right, it had been tipped the opposite way, right? But now the scales have gone so far in the other direction because there were never any guardrails on it, right? You go back to what NIL was intended to be, right? It's me appearing on this podcast, right? And you guys get to market my name and everything like that, and I get a little chunk of change from it. Not these collectives that are now just going to take the bag men that were giving you the duffel bags under the table. Now they're giving it to you out in the open, and because there were no guardrails, you can't walk it back now. Because if you do, then you're just going to wind up with more lawsuits, and I don't blame the players for capitalizing on it, just like I don't blame the coaches that are saying that this isn't for them, right? I know that like Jim Larinaga is the most recent one, right? And he benefited from the NIL, right? He had Life Wallet and they had that big pocketbook and they were able to help them get to a Final Four, right? And then it's funny, right? You go to a Final Four and you got 8 guys saying they're going to put their name in the portal, and it's like, Coral Gables isn't nice enough for you. We just went to a Final Four. You want to try to run it back, and again, they want to get their market value and they want to be able to find the best fit for them. And so, I don't disagree with that. I think that there needs to be some tweaks, right? Like you can have one free transfer, but that second transfer, you got to sit a year. Like let's go back
Right.
to that. Again, the way that colleges are now moving with potentially 15 scholarships, they're going to start redshirting guys again, and that's going to come with some risk reward, right? You could redshirt a kid that you think is going to be great, and he's like, well, I don't really want to sit anymore. I'm going to leave, because I'm 7 foot tall, and I know that I can go and make 6 figures even without any stats. So it's again, it's a crapshoot. It's above my pay grade for people to figure out. Because again, I am supportive of both sides.
Absolutely. And coach, listen, I think we got some Sonic coupons we might be able to get you for a free hamburger or something like that. But listen, I want everybody to know I'm all in favor of the kids making some kind of money. We're already starting to see the March Madness commercials and stuff like that with the kids. They're promoting these kids and stuff like that with their, faces and showing them in game. I'm all about that. Like I said, it just gets to an extreme. But I want to go back to one thing before we get off of here. Talking about Duke and, Duke tendency is to have, I'm not a Duke fan, by the way. I have to let everybody know that I'm a Carolina guy through and through, but I have to give credit to Con Knipple last night. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not, but there was a rebound on the baseline last night. Proctor goes over and he's nearly falling out of bounds. And I mean, he nearly falls out of bounds. What does Knipple do? Knipple grabs his leg and holds on to it so that he doesn't fall out of bounds and lose control of the ball. So you got to go back and look at this. It's unbelievable. And then they're laughing coming back up the court because I think Proctor winds up getting a free throw out of it or something. Somebody pushes him, but you've got to look at that, Gregory. It's amazing.
I mean, I'm not a new guy either, but I'll go back and look at it. So we gotta do what I do. But Coach, last two for me. I just want to talk about this season. I think you're 23-5 there. Kind of talk about how the season has gone so far, and then also, just if you can highlight some players. I know you have Pendergrass there, Maribel. We talked about Barlow and Vic and stuff like that. So just highlight some of the players that you have there.
For sure. No, I love our group, right? And I know that a lot of coaches will say that and they'll say it blindly, but now that we're sitting here January 28th, right? Like I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly from these guys, and to be 23-5 right now is it's good, right? We know that we're trying to. It's funny. I'm looking at my office door. It says good to great, but like we are working every day to transcend the curse of competence, right? Good enough is no longer good enough. We're getting ready to get into February where every game is game 7, like I mentioned earlier. So we've had some bumps in the road, right? Like those 5 losses. They have a national prep computer poll, right? That has data. It's kind of like Ken Palm for prep school basketball, and we don't have any losses outside of the top 35, right? So we've taken as good a losses as you possibly can, right? We had some poor shooting performances up in Massachusetts 2 weekends ago. Like we went 6 for 37 for in 2 games combined from 3, right? Then we come home against London and we go 14 for 36. And I'm like, if we did half of this in one game, we're probably walking out of Massachusetts, 25-3 instead of 23-5 right now. But we still have a lot in front of us. We again still trying to navigate this shattered backboard. But we've got 5 more EPL games, including 2 big ones this weekend up at Fork Union against Andrews Osborne and then Mass Nutton. So those are games that they're must wins, and we'll learn a lot about ourselves and how we position for that national prep championship up in New England in March. But you know what? Like, I'm glad that you guys have me on here, right? And I love to think of where I've come from and how I'm coaching here now. And I'm not sitting in this chair today without having incredible players, right? Every great coach, they've had great players. And that's who we have this year. And it's not just the talent, right? Like Shane Pendergrass is 6'9", 200, and he can put the ball on the deck. He can raise up over you. He can finish around the rim. Uh, he's super talented, right? Virginia Tech just offered him over the weekend. He's got 13 double doubles this year. But you know what Shane is, right? Shane's also the first one in the gym, last one to leave, right? Shane is hungry to sit in here and watch film, right? He is just trying to get better every single day, and him being a junior, right? Like, sky's going to be the limit for him. And then for guys like Jet Carter. Jet Carter is also a class of 26. His brother Jace plays at Texas A&M right now for Buzz Williams. And Jet, Jet's 6'5", 200, incredible athlete, right? Like he climbs on the rim, he gets downhill. But you know what? Jet is a winner. Like he just every single drill, he wants to win. He gets mad when they lose, and then he works even harder, right? He's incredible to be around. Guys like Cedric Horton, who's going to Texas A&M Corpus Christi next year. He's kind of filling in as a point guard for us right now. And he told me, it's funny, he was the one that mentioned that it was the Cubs game on Sunday night, but he told me, because he did some point guard duties back in December, and he's like, Coach, I'm not gonna lie to you, I was really nervous. And I was like, I couldn't tell. He's a winner, right? Just like Jet, just like Shane. Guys like, I mean, Malkia Marable, I call him Big Mal. But Big Mal is he's one of our team captains. You won't walk into the gym and not hear him, right? He's the most vocal guy on the team. He's picked up a couple Division I offers as the season's gone on. The guy's, again, for him, right? He played in an incredible school at Murray, and this is according to him, that he wasn't allowed to shoot outside the paint in high school, and he's shooting 45% from three for us. Guys, they get inside historic Walter Davis Gymnasium, and they just grow, right? It's not like they just get the NBA players' powers like the Monstars did in Space Jam, but like they grow, they work at it every single day, and like those are just a few of our guys. Like every single person on our team, at one point or another throughout the year, has done something to contribute to us being 23-5 in a positive way, right? And I give our players and our past players so much credit because, again, Hargrave is not for everybody, right? It's not the easy way out. They're better for you options, right? In the eyes of a teenager. I don't have to wear a uniform. I don't have to do all this other stuff, right? I'm not in Chatham, Virginia. I can be back home. I can sleep in my own bed, right? But you talk to these guys after they're gone, right? We just watched Madison Durr play for Monmouth at Elon last week, and to hear these guys talk about Hargrave just being in college, right? They're realizing the benefit of it. Then they start to get into their late 20s, early 30s, and they're like, man, Hargrave really changed my life, and walk by all the names every single day on my way to the office, right? We have the names of every single player that's played here. 75% of those guys have gone on to Division I schools, 29 NBA players, coaches, educators, CEOs, doctors, lawyers, whatever it is, right? Like the Hargrave family, it's real, right? Its roots run deep. And the guys that we have on the team this year, right? Like they are part of the family, right? And every single day they show up and they choose Hargrave, and I couldn't be more thankful for every single one of them.
Coach, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties I had just moments ago. My internet, believe me, Xfinity is not going to be one of our sponsors from here on, believe me. But listen, you mentioned a couple things, and that it's a good segue into my last question for you. And, you said something to the effect of, Hargrave may not be for everyone. And I'm just here to tell you that, I think you're being very humble at this point. I try to recognize that because,
in my eyes, you only have to look to a former coach who said he could only leave Hargrave in the hands of someone who loves Hargrave. And that person has to understand the culture of Hargrave, and he will also keep the school at an elite level. Ben Veshi checks all those boxes. So I'm sure you know where that come from, but any kid listening to that today, and we try to promote this to anybody and everybody. So anybody that's listening today, we just want to let them know that Ben Veshi is a class act, and you don't have to look any further than this.
You let me know where to send the check, because I pay that just like I paid them to write that. But no, I appreciate that, and it's even in today's day and age, right? We touched on it a lot. With NIL, with asking what can you do for me, not what can I do for you, and maybe it's because I'm from Massachusetts. Maybe it's because I've got some Irish blood, Catholic. But you go back to what JFK said, right? Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And every single day, I'm going to ask, what can I do for my players? And what can I do for Hargrave, and that loyalty, it's everything to me. So I appreciate you reiterating that press release. Again, I'm thankful every day that I get to wake up and choose Hargrave. I didn't think that 9 years ago when I got here. I'm looking at the office chair where I was sitting when AW was sitting behind this desk, and he said, "Ben, in 2 years you're going to be a Division I assistant." And I said, "Yes, coach, I believe you." Then 9 months later, he goes to NC State. 9 months after that, he's the head coach of Eastern Kentucky. 9 years later, I'm still here. And Chatham has become a second home, right? My wife's here. We've got a 2-year-old or almost 2-year-old daughter. And she works at Chatham Hall. I'm here at Hargrave. Like we are very much entrenched in the community. And it's a special place, and I'm thankful again every day that I get to wake up and be the head coach here at Hargrave. It's not very different than what it would feel like to coach the Boston Celtics. It's a dream job.
Well, Coach, no, we do appreciate your time. This has been just a great interview, probably one of our best. So we do appreciate your time to talk with us, and we wish you all the best of luck towards the end of the season. I know you have a minute coming up, so I'm sure you'll be doing a lot of prepping for that as well. So we'll be watching you guys and following on Twitter and kind of retweeting your stuff. So we do appreciate your time. So Coach Ben Veshi of the Hargrave Post Grad basketball team. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
Thank you, Coach.